So yeah, this is my video on femboy Nazi. I mean, it's a really weird phenomenon. What it is essentially is these like super authright, literally neo-Nazis essentially, are also femboys and gay. Like that really is just a walking hypocrisy, and it just doesn't make any sense. And obviously, like this like really weird niche community. They're not much of a problem, obviously, in the authright or anything like that. But like they do exist, so I thought it would be very interesting to make a video on them. Like I haven't stumbled into like such hypocrisy anymore. like like they're literally the meme of like a posadist, like the seven unironic posadists are at the same level of femboy Nazis. So yeah, that's what this video is. It's pretty fucked. Yeah, so femboy Nazi is like this, just absolute insanity, really. But yeah, so now I guess you understand what a femboy Nazi is. They're like these weak men that want to be women, right, and have relationships with like guys. Yeah, like bro, like this, literally. Like what? Are you serious? Like Jesus, dude. All right, like it just doesn't. Like, how are you a Nazi? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, it is like, they didn't even just take like a normal authorate position. You take like the most extreme position on cultural degeneracy. So extreme that it's not even about cultural like degeneracy, but like genetic degeneracy and like shit like that. It's crazy, you know? And obviously like absurd. But yeah, like you see like how are you supposed to be authorite? Like that's the memes they're posting. Like I get it, it's a funny meme or whatever. Like really? How like it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, and I guess the reasons for it are that, some degeneracy is okay in society, So like we're not that like we're not super hypocrites or something. Like bro, what the fuck? Seriously? Jesus Christ, man. And they also kind of have like a bit of an incel attitude really, where they're kind of like, he's like super, they're not even red pilled, they're like super black pilled, you know, and they're like, oh yeah, why should I care about, having white kids or something that like Nazis should care about because all the white men or the white women want to be with black men and stuff like that. It's like super incel and cringe. Like, cause like that just like isn't true. Like incels have a point, but the problem obviously isn't just women in like the American dating culture, right? It's not just women, it's not just men, obviously. It's kind of like a mix of both genders and them being generally, shitty, right? But also like to get black pilled over it? Come on. Really? Like bro. Very sad. So yeah. So I guess those are some reasons, right, why they exist. My hypothesis going in was essentially that they were just like these social outcasts, and they were kind of just looking for identity, you know what I mean? So like they went down the kind of, I guess, a basic path of like radicalization where they're looking for identity, and they find this like community to become a part of that, all welcomes them and whatever. But being a social outcast and like looking for identity and becoming radicalized or whatever is not Like, it doesn't just lead to you being a fucking femboy. It doesn't really make any sense. So I think that's also where, and I was thinking that's kind of where, like, the incel stuff comes in, or, like, some sort of, like, outside uh, force, you know, some outside problem. So that was kind of, like, the basic, you know, equation, right? That they're social outcasts. They're looking for identity, so they're gonna get radicalized. They're also kind of like incel slash like outside black pilling force. And I mean, obviously, they're like degenerate, and yeah, so being degenerate is a part of it because you know they're femboys. Doesn't really make much sense to be a Nazi, and like you can talk about what degenerate is, but from a Nazi perspective or an authright perspective, um, that is very degenerate, obviously. So that was my original equation. After talking to this person, it did change a bit, right? I mean, I guess it kind of expanded, you know? Right? So you have all these chats. I'll let you just, you know, look at some of these. So my points did kind of expand. That, like, they're kind of like just like these super weak modern men who are just like super displaced by like our alienation through like phone essentially. And they're also like super horny, right? They're super horny and angry. They literally fall into this femboy stuff as a cope. But this point can be kind of wrong because like you don't just like fall into being gay as a cope. Like that doesn't really make any much sense. So they must be femboys, I guess, before they become authright. Which also obviously still is weird. But my equation did kind of change because most of them will probably be looking for identity, but that kind of like, instead of it being a plus between social outcasts and looking for identity, they're kind of the same thing. So there will usually probably be like an outside force of that pushing them in to looking for like, or at least accepting radical views to be a part of a community. I don't think that's the most extremist, but I think that is some. And then the incel outside force thing, I would say that doesn't have to do with being a femboy completely, but it may have to, you know, it might be a side piece on how they cope with being a femboy for reasoning and stuff, you know. It, but it is like maybe this like small piece of how they became gay femboys because you know they reject women or something and they want to be the woman now, whatever. And obviously they're still degenerate, so that's the equation of a femboy Nazi. Basically, let's see. So they might be these things. You could add on something. I think the incel slash black pill thing is what pushes them into the authright, because they're just kind of angry, looking for a reason to be angry. And I mean, yeah, I mean that's pretty much the equation, you know. That equals a femboy Nazi, basically. Um, yeah, and that is what they are basically. It is weird how they would get there in the first place, though. It's like this really huge rabbit hole. I guess looking at a rabbit hole, it's hard to understand it when you're just looking at the surface, unless you went down that specific rabbit hole yourself. So, I don't know. That's what I understand from talking to people in this, you know, looking in this fucking community. Okay. So, yeah, that's what they are. And I guess now we'll get into the hypocrisy, because obviously it's a little bit different if we just say, oh yeah, blah blah blah, they're, you know, they're hypocrites or whatever. but it's important to totally understand why, and also why their like reason for it doesn't make sense, you know? Because it doesn't, like, it's completely absurd. So, obviously, being Nazi, the most culturally conservative, does not work with being degenerate. And the reason for it is, you know, some degeneracy is okay. Ultimately, if you're going to just try to, secure your nation still, you still want to, like, oh yeah, you want to secure your nation, you love your nation, blah, blah, blah. It's okay. And that would be okay if they were, like, just nationalist, like normal, patriotic nationalist femboys, but they're not. They're not. They're like lib right. Being a lib would make sense. Being authoritarian can make sense. Being authright, that's very debatable, but being Nazi is not. Because, some degeneracy is okay is not an argument for being a Nazi femboy. Because it's not like you're only being a little bit degenerate, right? So the first point is that being a femboy is one of the most degenerate things you can do, because you're what a Nazi would despise. You're literally a weak man, and you're quite literally feminine, right? Because you want to be like a feminine boy, and you're gay too. You're gay, and you're not going to be really having kids because you're going to be in a gay relationship. So it's not like it's, oh yeah, just, some degeneracy. Some degeneracy is okay. It's like, no, this is a lot. This is one of the most degenerate things you can be or you can do. And really, it's an antithesis to the kind of social policy of Nazis, where they want strong men who will further their race. And the other argument to some degeneracy is okay is because there will be strong men, there will also be weak men. That's also not a good argument, because so it's not a good argument because, like, strong men, it's not like there's like this dichotomy between like a weak man and a strong man. It's not like you're born like either. You might be born with a proclivity to being a weaker man or a stronger man, but strong men don't just like exist, right? To be a strong man is not a quality but a habit. It's doing things like, whatever, no fab or something, or, running, exercising, spending your money wisely, whatever, It's something you work on. It's something you build up. And that is the problem. There's no excuse for staying a weak man, because you can build up into being a strong man. So that specific point of, like, keeping space for like weak men in society, gives weak men a role, is like completely asinine with the point of the authright. Really anything authright. Because it's not about like, oh yeah, the weak men must die or something. No, it's that we have to become stronger men so we can continue these good times and we can create better times, because weak men don't. So that other reason, kind of at their core, is completely dissolved or destroyed. I destroyed it like I'm Ben Shapiro destroying libtards. But yeah, like, so they might have a position in the authorate, but the fact that they're so degenerate, it really puts them just like on, I guess, the like economic right, like sort of. I guess they're like economically third positionist because like obviously Nazis are and fascists are not like on the left of communism for the economic or on the right of capitalism. They're like kind of in a new position. So I mean I guess they're just economically fascist and culturally they're still very on the right, but they don't hold themselves to the same standard. So yeah, it just goes back into they're literally hypocrites that are coping and they self-hate. Obviously, how are you gonna be like saying, oh yeah, degeneracy is like, you know, bad if because my ideology and stuff, and also be a degenerate. And this is actually what hubris said a lot, that like lib left and authright, um, specifically like the communities he was in, the degenerate ones or whatever, and the degenerate authright one being like this, that absurdity. Uh, you know, there's a lot of self-hate going on in the femboy community, which kind of makes sense, because if your worldview is degeneracy is bad, and you're like the epitome of degeneracy, you're gonna hate yourself. I think a fair conclusion would be that they seem to really be like products of their situation who just kind of fell into darkness rather than like working towards the light. And by the light, I mean like being mentally healthy, you know, and also breaking through the problems they face. And obviously, these uh, these like radical femboys faced alienation, being kind of like social outcasts and stuff. They faced kind of like their own hypocrisy at the end and did nothing about it. They still aren't. And it's not like I blame them necessarily for not working towards at least, like, you know, quote unquote, the light, or at least working towards being like a sound person with your ideology and worldview, because at least I can respect that. But I do blame them for, you know, staying down in the mud, you know, staying these like super socially conservative degenerates, like essentially. At their core, they're hypocrites. And it's not like people are perfect, but they are particularly bad. Like, everyone is allowed to have some hypocrisy because we really aren't perfect. You know, we're allowed to not be perfect, we're allowed to make mistakes and move forward, right? But there's a difference between that and having your worldview completely conflict with your actions and not doing anything about it. You know, especially like these are very, very, very big conflicts. It's not like something small like, oh, I'm like a Nazi who masturbates or something. You know, it's a very, very big conflict. Like, in fact, I'd even say being a femboy. Being a Nazi is like the antithesis of being a femboy, because they're on just like completely opposite spectrums. Yeah, yeah, it'd be like the like one unironic anti-centrist who actually believes, or somehow like an amalgamation of like being, oh yeah, I'm off left, off right, liberate and lib left at the same time, and I'm not a centrist because I actually believe in all these extreme points, you know, that like completely conflict with each other, rather than being like a centrist who just has moderate views. No, it's that they have all the extreme views. That doesn't equal out to being a centrist. It equals out to being like this really crazy hypocrite. And like to the whole thing about like degeneracy, um, it's not like if you're like doing like degenerate things or whatever, it's not like you're a bad person, right? At least from an authright perspective. The problem I've seen is a lot of people I think it is because it is just easier to say more extreme things on the internet because you're just saying them rather than like acting on them or actually believing them completely. It's because they'll say, oh yeah, all the degenerates need to be killed or whatever. And I mean, obviously that's like insane, right? I mean, this is just crazy. And from the authright perspective, they aren't, we need to realize like they aren't bad people. They're just doing bad things and need to change. Like, I guess they could be unironic Nazis, I guess, you know, or neo-Nazis or whatever, if they, changed. Even though I can talk about Nazism in a second and why it kind of just doesn't make sense. So yeah, they just kind of need to change. They can be authright, and I think anyone in authright should welcome them into the authright as long as they actively become better and more agreeable to their own worldview. And, I think that's pretty fair, right? You have to accept the people that you don't like if those people are willing to change for, like, the better of your point of view. Rather than saying, oh yeah, let's just kill all the degenerates and stuff. That'll solve the problem. It's like, no, that's absurd. You're not going to convince anyone. That's the first point. And the second point is that's not a valid ideology. Ideologies should probably exist for, like, the betterment of, the people. Or maybe you have your secondary reason for ideologies existing, which is, like, or governments existing really is so that governments will either, serve the people, give people the best life, protect the people, and whatever, and to achieve certain goals, like, oh, let's get everyone to space, let's colonize Mars or something, or let's fight off this invasion, and we're working towards that. That's our one goal. They exist for these reasons, and governments and ideologies really do go hand in hand because the way a government works and how it runs, or at least the tenets behind how it runs or why it does what it does, is ideology. And you can't just be like, oh, let's kill all our enemies, because you're never going to get anywhere. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, so I mean, I don't hate, these, like, femboy Nazis, but but I don't like that they are walking hypocrisies. And as for Nazism, to be entirely honest, like, being a neo-Nazi does not make sense. Because it's like being a Stalinistic communist, it doesn't make any sense. The only time that being a neo-Nazi would make sense is if you are an Aryan German living in Germany. Just like being a Stalinistic communist only makes sense if you are a Russian in Russia. They only make sense within that area, and more specifically within their time frame. So I mean, that's just a simple analysis. It's not something like super huge. Oh, Slavic Fritz declares war on neo-Nazis and their absurdities or something. It's just like, in general, that's kind of how it is. So yeah, not only are they walking hypocrisies, they also believe, like, this really stupid ideology that doesn't make any fucking sense, because it wasn't an ideology built for everyone. It was an ideology that grew around, like, 1910s, like early 1900s Germany, and then came about in early 1920s, 30s, 40s Germany, essentially. So it just doesn't fucking fit our time, or this, like, the framework of the neo-Nazi ideology. It doesn't even view the world. You only view, like, half of the world, and the other half is, like, scribbled off the edge. Because it's not a valid framework. So yeah, I mean, that's basically it, I'll be making more videos. Oh, you know what? How about this? This is a great way to end the videos, liberals. The next video I'll do is on energy credits. This video is going to be a hell of a lot longer because it's an interview with someone. So, I might interview someone with that. I might interview this like Fortnite player who makes money off Fortnite. You know, that might be interesting. If you want an interview, comment. Like, I'm down to make content with you. I'm also going to be working on some other projects. So yeah, I mean, I'll be working on other projects. That'll be interesting. Look forward to that. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to now. I'm gonna have to edit those. Well, my friend. Well, he's a good friend. He's gonna edit these videos for me, but he's gonna edit those like those wacky little flags. I'm sure you can understand what kind of symbol it is, knowing it's a fucking like Nazi server, which I'm probably gonna leave because it's cringe. So yeah, I'll be making some more videos. Comment if you want to see something specific made or you want to have an interview or something. I'm obviously, down to make content. Because, how the hell is an interview if I'm not interviewing?